Hello everyone, let's get right into it because we have a lot to talk about with Nefer. She is the newest 5-star Dendro main DPS arriving in version 6.1, and frankly, she is looking to be one of the absolute strongest carries we've seen in the game. In this guide, we're going to cover everything you need to know: her talents, her rotations, what her best weapons and artifacts are, and of course, her teams and constellations. We'll also be taking a much closer look at just how much she relies on her dedicated support, Lauma. Now, before we dive into her kit, looking for the best way to recharge in Genshin Impact? Lootbar.gg is the smarter choice. It works exactly like the in-game top-up, but it's way cheaper. New users get 5% off with the link in the pinned comment, and existing users get 3% off. Lootbar also has special deals on crystal packs, including the 6480 bundle, and even an all-in-one package with everything you need. See this? The regular $100 pack only costs $82 on Lootbar. The process is simple and secure. You don't need your password or login. Just enter your UID, pick your server, choose your pack, and your crystals are delivered in seconds. Players around the world trust Lootbar because it's fast, safe, and affordable. So don't waste your money. Click the link in the description or pinned comment and start saving on your top-ups today. Lootbar, safe, fast, and way more affordable. Okay, so to understand Nefer, we first have to talk about her kit, and to understand her kit, we have to explain a new reaction that Genshin added back in version 6.0 called Lunar Bloom. The way this works is that by having a character like Nefer or Lauma on your team, anytime a normal bloom reaction is triggered, it will automatically be converted into a lunar bloom. Now, the bloom cores that get created by this reaction are actually the same as regular bloom cores. They don't deal any extra damage on their own. The difference is what they generate. These cores create a new stack called Verdant Dew every 2.5 seconds. This Verdant Dew can then be consumed by either Nefer or Lauma to deal lunar bloom damage, and this is the damage that gets enhanced. The scaling for this is based on elemental mastery. For every point of EM that Nefer or Lauma has, their lunar bloom-based damage will increase, and this scales up to a 14% cap, which you'll hit once they reach 800 elemental mastery. So, Nefer herself is a 5-star Dendro Catalyst user who ascends with crit damage and even starts with a base 200 EM, which is a great head start. She is best played as a main DPS hyper carry, really focusing on dealing that very high lunar bloom damage we just discussed. Her normal attacks are just standard infused catalyst attacks, and honestly, they aren't important to her playstyle at all. Her charged attacks, however, activate her slither state. This is where she gains faster movement, and it consumes stamina, lasting for up to 2.5 seconds. It's worth noting that if she enters this high-movement slither state while her skill is already active, the stamina consumption will be reduced. But the elemental skill is really the most important part of her entire kit. When you use it, Nefer enters a special stance mode for 9 seconds, which grants her increased interruption resistance and, most importantly, enhances her charged attacks. These enhanced charged attacks hit 5 times. The first 2 hits are scaled from both her attack and her EM, but the last 3 hits, and this is key, are scaled fully from EM and deal that lunar bloom damage. This is where the vast majority of her personal damage comes from. To perform this enhanced charged attack, she doesn't consume stamina. Instead, she consumes that Verdant Dew, which, as we explained, is created by triggering a bloom reaction every 2.5 seconds. Her skill also has 2 charges, which lets you deal double the amount of enhanced charged attacks in a single rotation, assuming you can keep generating those Verdant Dew stacks. Before we get to her burst, we need to cover her Ascension 1 passive to get a clearer picture of what her skill can really do. Her A1 activates after Nefer uses her skill if the team is in what's called the Ascendant Gleam state. This just means you need to have at least 2 Nod Cry characters in the party. When these requirements are met, any bloom cores on the field will be converted into Seeds of Deceit. These are special. They cannot explode or trigger hyperbloom or burgeon like regular bloom cores can. Instead, when Nefer uses her enhanced charged attacks, she will absorb these seeds and gain a stack. This stack increases the damage of her enhanced charged attacks by 8% for 9 seconds, and it stacks up to 3 times for a total 24% boost. In addition to that, after consuming 3 seeds, Nefer also gains 100 EM for 8 seconds. Now, her elemental burst deals 2 AoE Dendro hits. If Nefer has any of those stacks created by her A1 passive, they will be consumed to boost the burst's damage even further. However, you need to know that her burst only contributes about 10% of Nefer's overall damage, and consuming her A1 stacks might actually hurt her DPS if there are no other seeds available on the field to absorb right afterwards. Her Ascension 4 passive will make her start generating Verdant Dew on her own for 5 seconds, right after a bloom reaction is triggered. But this only happens under certain conditions. Nefer had to have activated her skill, and then entered the Slither state, that's the fast movement state from a charged attack, which she would do if she no longer has any Verdant Dew to consume. This personal Verdant Dew generation will also speed up by up to 50% once Nefer reaches 1000 EM. This passive really just comes into play when you aren't playing Nefer optimally, or maybe if you have very slow hydro application that just can't keep up with the 2.5-second cooldown of the normal Verdant Dew generation. As for her other passives, her Overworld passive grants 25% more rewards when she's dispatched on a Nod Cry expedition for 20 hours. She also has a neat ability to obtain intelligence from various sources in Nasha Town, which is similar to Nahida's mind-reading ability. For talent priorities, it's very straightforward. Focus on her skill, as it is her main source of damage. After that, level her burst if you plan to use it, but her normal and charge attacks can be completely ignored. Now for her rotation. You'll want to start by using your team's talents to activate their buffs and apply both Hydro and Dendro to the enemies. This will trigger the Lunar Bloom reaction and start generating that all-important Verdant Dew. If you are using Lauma in the team, make sure to use her tap skill and not the hold version, because the hold version will make Lauma consume the Verdant Dew you just generated. Then you swap to Nefer and press her skill to enter her special stance. From here, perform 3 charged attacks, then use the skill's second charge and do another 3 charged attacks. The most important thing here is to make sure you have at least 1 Verdant Dew stack before each charged attack, so she performs her enhanced version instead of the regular one. If you do accidentally trigger her regular charged attack, it's fine, since that will just activate her Ascension 4 passive to help generate Verdant Dew faster. It's really guides like this that help break down these complex kits, so if you're finding this breakdown useful, maybe consider subscribing to see more filter guides just like this one. Now, if you do choose to use her burst, just remember that it consumes her Ascension 1 stacks. Those stacks give a strong buff to her charged attacks, which make up the majority of her damage. I would recommend using the burst only after spending all your charged attacks, or perhaps when you have 3 seeds on the field ready to refresh the buffs. Or honestly, you could even consider not using it at all, given its low contribution and the fact that it just makes her rotation longer. When it comes to weapons, her signature, Reliquary of Truth, is by far her best in-slot. It gives 8% crit rate, 120 elemental mastery, and a whopping 124% crit damage. You can also use any offensive crit or EM catalyst you have. The new catalyst, Dawning Frost, can be one of her best options at R5, but you do need to pull on her weapon banner to get it. She also has a great free-to-play option with the Black Marrow Lantern. This is the Nod Cry craftable weapon, and at R5 it's a very competitive choice for her. For her artifacts, her best set is the 4-piece Night of the Skies Unveiling. This gives her up to 30% crit rate and 20% lunar reaction damage when she's played with another Nod Cry character who is holding the Silken Moon's Serenade set, which, let's be honest, you will want to pair with her anyway. You can also use Marashasi Hunter if you're running her with Furina, or Gilded Dreams if you just do not yet have a good Skies Unveiling set. For the main stats, she does have some ATK scaling in her kit, but her main source of damage, those 3 Lunar Bloom hits from her enhanced charged attack scale, only with EM. Because of this, you will want to go with EM on both the Sands and the Goblet. For the Circlet, use either crit damage or crit rate. But since the Skies Unveiling set already gives you up to 30% crit rate, you're probably better off going for crit damage. Also, since her burst is not very impactful, you can completely ignore her energy recharge needs and just use it when it's available, if you even want to. For substats, your main goal is to make sure you have around 1000 elemental mastery to maximize her passive buffs. After you hit that number, focus on crit rate and crit damage. ATK percent and flat ATK are nice to have, but they are much less important. Moving on to teams, Nefer's kit design is heavily focused on Lunar Bloom damage. This, plus her need for another Nod Cry character to enable that Ascendant Gleam state, means she is not a very flexible character. She really only works properly in a small number of teams. Her best performing team is, as you'd expect, a Lunar Bloom team featuring Nefer, Llama, Aino, and Nahida. We all pretty much know by now that Llama is her dedicated support, but just how much does Nefer really need her? The answer is very much. The buffs Llama provides to Lunar Bloom teams are massive, and playing Nefer without her in almost any scenario results in a very noticeable damage loss. But even though Nefer really wants Llama on her team, their synergy isn't actually perfect, since both of them want to consume Verdant Dew to deal the majority of their damage. Because of that, Llama will need to perform worse by using her tap skill, for example, to not steal Nefer's Verdant Dews and hurt her performance. It's definitely a strange situation. The best Hydro slot at the moment is Aino. This is because she doesn't need Nefer to normal attack to apply Hydro. She's a great holder of the Silken Moon's Serenade set, which gives the whole team up to 120 EM. She has low cooldowns on her burst, which allows for faster rotations, and at higher constellations, she provides strong buffs for teams that focus on lunar damage. You can also use Yellen or Xingqiu, but then you'll need to weave in some normal attacks, which just isn't very comfortable. Farina is also an option, but her burst won't help much, and you will have to use a healer on the team. This is a big weakness in her teams at the moment, as she doesn't really have a dedicated healer or even a shielder. There is also a strong chance that Columbina will replace Aino as the best Hydro support for Lunar Bloom teams, and maybe even give them a significant buff, but we'll just have to wait and see on that. For the last slot, if you don't plan to use any sustain, then Nahida is probably the best option at the moment, thanks to her amazing EM buff. Sucrose is another strong option. Even though she doesn't react with Dendro or give any healing, her EM buff is very valuable for Nefer. When it comes to sustain characters, the best option is probably Inefa. Even though she's Electro and can't proc Hyperbloom in Nefer's teams, she still provides a shield, a good EM buff, and great damage. There are other healers and shielders that are good options, but the problem with them is they just do not contribute much beyond their healing, protection, and application, other than Inefa. This makes them feel a bit below the standard for recent sustainers in the current time of the game. Another option for sustain is just using Prototype Amber on Nahida, or relying on Xingqiu's Rain Swords for some minor healing, though neither of those is optimal. The best sustain option by far is Llama's C1, which provides healing and allows you to focus on a much more offensive last slot. Finally, you can technically use Nefer in Hyperbloom or Burgeon teams. You'd do this by not pairing her with another Nod Cry character, which prevents her Ascension 1 from activating and converting the Bloom cores into Seeds of Deceit. However, this also means she loses the strong buff she gets from that passive, which results in a big damage loss. The teams still function, but it's not ideal. Now let's quickly break down her constellations to see if they are worth investing in. Her C1 increases her Lunar Bloom reaction damage. C2 buffs her Ascension 1 passive to give a much bigger buff. C3 gives extra skill levels, which means a bit more damage. C4 lets her gain Verdant Dew faster and applies Dendro RES Shred to opponents while she is in her skill stance. C5 raises her burst levels, which is not very significant. And finally, her C6 adds more hits to her enhanced charged attacks, makes them stronger, and also increases her Lunar Bloom damage. The takeaway here is that she is already a very strong DPS at C0 if you have Llama with her. But if you want to invest more, her signature weapon gives just a bit more of a damage increase than her C1. Also, if you don't have Llama, getting either her weapon or her C1 does compensate for it to some extent, similar to how Flynn's is with Inefa. And if you are willing to go all the way to C2, then it becomes a really good investment that makes her very impressive, both with and without Llama. So Nefer is taking her spot as another very impressive DPS, who will probably sit just under Mavuika and Skirk, and right next to Flynn's and Verisa. From what I have seen, she does seem fun to play, and even though her kit has a lot of nuances, her gameplay is actually quite simple. I think the big concern, though, is how this is becoming a very expensive trend, where every new DPS seems to have a 5-star dedicated support that they can hardly be played without. On top of that, most of the hardest content in the game, like the Stygian Onslaught, always seems to be tailored to favor these new characters. I know the same has been done with the Spiral Abyss, but in the Stygian Onslaught, the difference between using the new character or any other one is much more noticeable. I really hope this will improve in the future, as the game is slowly leaning more and more toward pay to win. Anyway, if you have Lauma, I do recommend pulling for Nefer, as she seems to be one of the stronger main DPS characters in the game at the moment, and will probably have most content tailored for her for most of this year. And that's a wrap. If this video helped you in any way, consider giving it a like and subscribe for more guides. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.